Welcome to day 3 of the 8th annual research seminar. Now we're going to have our sub-theme 4, our roundtable discussion that is going to look at state resilience, institutional capacity, and public service efficiency towards a sustainable growth. And this roundtable discussion will be led by our own Professor Chisasa, who will then be leading us. And then I think he can then come up and call up his panel that will then be taking us through this important discussion today. Prof. Chisasa, over to you.
Good morning. Did you sleep well? Those who didn't, I'll explain. Today is the last day of the seminar, and I'm privileged to be here to be part of the delegations wrapping up the seminar. I'm also privileged to be facilitating this round table discussion, which I'm hoping will literally get the panelists to sit at a round table. Fortunately, we are blessed with round tables, many of them, in the house. I would like to invite Dr. Valerie Yao Yao from APAM, APRM. I almost made the R silent. But from APRM, Dr. P. Sokela, DPSA, Dr. Mataya Wiseka, DPSA. Please can you, when you come here, help me pronounce your name so that we don't re-Christian you. Prof. D.M. Mello from UNISA. Are you gonna join me, please? We do have round tables also up here. So, yeah. And by the way, I must also mention that I'm here on behalf of Dr. N.V. Muraka. She's the one who was supposed to be facilitating this discussion. I almost said we're one man down. Colleagues, I must immediately express my concern about this panel here. Gentlemen, I'm really concerned about the composition of the panel, which is... Sorry, Dr. Matayo is finishing something outstanding because you're from the same unit. Okay, that's fine, thank you. So this panel is not gender sensitive. It's not EEP compliant. 100% male. That worries me. Yeah, may I please invite 2 ladies to replace 2 gentlemen? No, I'm just kidding. Today's sub-theme that we will be discussing is on state resilience, institutional capacity, and public service efficiency towards sustainable growth. Big words and big stories there. You know, state resilience is an issue across Africa. Institutional capacity is yet another. And leading to that, the efficiency with which public institutions serve us remains a toothache. And I think these gentlemen are here to share with us their perspectives on how we can help our respective states to transform from where we are now to institutions or to states that serve us as best as we expect them to, given the huge sums of money that we pay or contribute to the state coffers through taxes in their different forms and shapes. Without wasting your time and mine, I would like to call upon Dr. Valerie Yao Yao to lead this discussion. Yeah, please come and talk to you. Let me also say that let's see how much time we have.
Time, yeah.
How much time do we have?
Let me say less than 10 minutes.
Okay.
It's
So
not
I'll say 10 minutes,
Yeah.
maximum.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. So I think I'm, sorry? Yes. Yes, I'm quite in the adapter. But I can do it, I'll show. Yes. Okay, so I'm from the African Peer Review Mechanism, and perhaps it's an opportunity to thank you for the invitation, for extending the invitation to us, but also express the gratitude of our CEO to the organizers of the seminar. So in terms of governance, the African Peer Review Mechanism as an organ of the African Union understands governance from 5 thematic areas, which are democracy and political governance, economic governance, corporate governance, socio-economic development, and state resilience to shocks and disasters. So I thought it was important, but being here, the invitation that we received, I think mainly focuses on state resilience to shocks and disasters. And then we would like to inform that it is during, we embraced the resilience agenda very recently in 2020 when during the COVID pandemic, and we had to conduct a very thorough introspection and see how the African Peer Review Mechanism was fit for purpose, especially that our questionnaire used to focus on 4 thematic areas. That's how we came with the 5th thematic area. So in that thematic area, just is a kind of snapshot. We have four objectives. And the first one is on the established policy, legislative, and institutional framework for disaster risk reduction. The second one is to enhance knowledge management and early warning to improve resilience to shocks and disasters. The third one is the increased investment in disaster risk reduction to enhance resilience. And objective 4 is enhancing disaster preparedness for disaster response to build back better in recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. As you can notice, these 4 objectives are well aligned with the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, which spans from 2015 to 2030. And having said that, I want to single out one of the projects the African Union for discussion here, and it's mainly the Africa Urban Resilience Program. And the presentation was prepared both by myself and some colleagues from the African Union Commission. And the idea is, and I think in the statement of the CEO we already said it, it's important when you look at resilience to also not forget the fact, the contribution of cities around the world into both the building of resilience, but also the challenges related to building resilience, especially in Africa. So at the global level, one needs to know that cities occupy only 2% of the world land area, yet they produce more than 70% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So it means that if you want to build resilience, cities are places where there's more concentration of population, and that's where we produce most of the disasters that are taking place. So here, disaster impacts in Africa are becoming more urban. By saying so, we want to highlight that the frequency, intensity of urban disasters and impacts. Urbanization dynamics and urban planning dilemmas are drivers of disaster risk. Urban development investments are drivers of disaster risk. And there are various capacities and gaps to address urban disaster risk. And there are also heightened vulnerabilities and varied and differential impacts on vulnerable groups. We are referring specifically to human settlement in most of the African countries. You look at South Africa, you look at Alexandra, you look at Soweto, you look at Mamelodi. All this is what you are talking about when you refer to human settlement. Urban risk is exacerbated by climate change. As you know, environmental degradation, inequality, as well as disaster displacement and conflicts. We look at this perspective because using the system thinking approach, it is futile to understand disasters on a standalone basis. For example, decisions that are made have a political needs, political commitment, and all things that you can imagine. So when you talk about disasters, let me give you an example. In the field of disaster risk management, it is clearly understood that what we call natural disasters, in fact, if you look at the latest report of the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it is clearly stated that almost all disasters are anthropogenic. They are not natural. So the naturalness of disasters is questioned, because if you decide to build houses like landslides, because I concluded a study in Sierra Leone recently as I was completing my MS in disaster risk reduction. So there was, I'm sure you know that story very well, where there was a landslide and floods in Sierra Leone in 2017, which took the lives of more than 1,400 people. So we went to the site and we are trying to understand what happened. Through literature review and visits, we clearly understood that it was a deliberate decision to build houses in river banks. So this is one of the reasons that exacerbated, because flood is natural, but the impact of these disasters were exacerbated by the decision to build houses in the river banks. It's one of the reasons. So the naturalness of disasters is questioned at this stage in disaster management literature. That's the first point I wanted to highlight. And secondly, the project that is being run by the African Union clearly believes that as we build disaster resilience at the national level, we should also focus on building resilience at the local level, because that's where things are happening. Most of the disasters, some happen in cities, but others also happen in rural areas. But they don't have the same impact. Assuming there is let's take the landslides in KwaZulu-Natal. If they had happened in a village, they would not have the same impact. But because it was in a city, the impact was much more, and there were more people who died as a result of the disaster. So it is important that, for example, cities and urban centers have improved capacities for disaster risk assessment. And our latest assessment in South Africa, as we're evaluating South Africa, is just appeared as one of the key, one of the best practices in South Africa, especially for the city of Cape Town, that in Cape Town, when there's a disaster, there's also a post-assessment of the disaster to understand the reasons so that they can further build on the vulnerabilities and equip the city in such a way that at a later stage, if there are other disasters, at least the impact will be reduced. As APRM, we have conducted some studies, and APRM, as a result of what we have done, we have become a member of the Africa Working Group on Disaster Risk Reduction since 2021. We have assessed, as I said, South Africa's resilience to disasters in the country review mission of South Africa in 2021. I think Dr. Sekela has the findings of the report. President Ramaphosa last year launched the report. I think it was in Durban, in Johannesburg, in Sandton. In December, launched the, yeah. So I think it's something that is now available on the web. We also conducted regional workshops. The inaugural one was in Freetown for West Africa, and Last year in September, we conducted another one with the Economic Commission of Central African States in Burundi, Bujumbura. We also generate knowledge products, and this is the way for us to understand and assist member states in building capacity, because the whole issue, when you analyze, it is the capacity gaps that are in our member states. Both human, financial, capacities are really lacking in our member states, and that's why we collaborate with some institutions such as ARC, Africa Risk Capacity. We collaborate with APAM to deliver some workshops where we can capacitate our member states. So strengthening the capacity of municipal and national governments is critical to reduce vulnerability. We also need anticipatory adaptation. As we talk about disasters, it is important to build anticipatory adaptation, which is the assumption that governments can plan ahead and reduce the impact of adverse climate change events. It is the results of deliberate policy decision and is done on the awareness that conditions have changed or are expected to change, and that some form of action is required to maintain a desired state. So this is how we define anticipatory actions. But as you wrap up? Yes, as I wrap up, it's important to learn from disasters. And I think in our member states, what we have noticed is that we don't really learn a lot from disasters. Because for us, that was supposed to be the key point. How do we learn from a disaster event, and how do we build capacity in order to resist disasters in the future? Now, in member states, we also have noticed that there's a need for early warning system and disaster preparedness for effective disaster response. City planning is a critical issue in mega cities, and the need for coordinated efforts, especially during disaster response. I think that's what I want to add, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yaoyao. Interesting to learn that not all risks are, not all disasters are natural disasters. Yeah, thank you for that piece of education. Some of the disasters are disasters that we catalyze ourselves. And yeah, let's hear from the next speaker on that note. Professor Mello, by the way, we're not going to go in the order of the list that you see in the program. So please come and share with us your views on this topic.
Thank you very much, moderator. I think you may be accused of favoritism, as you are my colleague and you're calling me before others. Good morning, and my name is David, the surname is Mello. I am attached to the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs. And I'm also going to talk about state resilience, institutional capacity, and public service efficiency. Now, I'm going to take a slant in terms of my presentation, and mainly because of my area of interest. I do research and I publish in the area of managing human capital. And the central thesis of my talk would be that a state is as good as the people who are found in it. And it is the people in that country, South Africa or any African country, who make the state to be resilient. And I actually reflected a bit in terms of what is happening in Africa. A lot of governments, a lot of coups are happening here in Africa. Governments are being taken out of power by people who are dissatisfied, by people who are saying that we can't wait any longer. Now, that tells us something about the state. It tells us something about the people who are in this state. because it is basically saying that there is a social contract within every country between the rulers as well as the ruled. But those who are the rulers, as soon as they are sent to power, they seem to quickly forget that they are placed in positions by the people. Now, in my talk, I'll briefly talk about education. I'll talk about the demographic dividend. I'll talk about training. And lastly, the commodification of knowledge, which are some of the problem areas that I have identified in as far as my talk is concerned. Now, perhaps starting with education. Where are we in terms of education? Are we happy with the standards of our education system? You know, students in South Africa came to us as universities and said, you must re-look into your education. Decolonize this education system that you are having. And the question is, have we done enough since the fees must fall? And I would argue that we have not as yet done enough. And I want to have a look at education from the very elementary as well as the formative stages of education. From the kid who is entering what we call a crèche, or an early development center. What is it that we're doing to these children at that age? And I can argue that some of them go to those centers. They spend much of their time either singing or sleeping. But do we send our kids there to sing and sleep? And it is my argument that at that very early age, we need to start working on the mind. It is not simply about development. And I'm arguing that perhaps we need to have a pro-development education. Now, what do I mean by a pro-development education? It is actually a type of education that would reorient the African child's mind in as far as the future is concerned. And I'm arguing that we should start at that very early stage to reorient them, because the type of education I got and the type of aspirations that I had as a young person growing up in South Africa, I believe that I would have had different aspirations if I had a different education. If my mind was not tuned towards going to school, finishing what is known as grade 12, going to university, and then looking for a job. Now, if at a young stage, in primary schools as well as high schools, we start reorienting the mind towards educating creators, towards educating innovators of the future, then we are not going to have a lot of people who are job seekers. And I'll talk about this when I look at the demographic dividends. Perhaps we also need a lot of financial literacy, maybe mixed with economics, because I believe some of our politicians do not understand these two things. That basically sometimes you do not need to go to a foreign country, to the IMF, to get money. Because sometimes there is money in your country. There are billionaires, there are people who are earning salaries. And most countries have got government bonds. But how many people are investing in those government bonds? Because if we invest, if everybody who is working in a country can invest in a government bond, then government would not need to go and borrow money, because we're giving government money in addition to the tax that we're paying. So financial literacy, sometimes we blame politicians as well, but politicians and political parties, they are also the microcosm of our own society. They come from the same education system. And that is why my argument is that we should start with the education system. Now, moderator, will quickly move on to the next aspect, which is the demographic dividend. Now, with the demographic dividend, for some countries, 4 minutes, oh, okay, I'm rushing. For some countries, it's actually a plus. But for Africa and most African countries, it looks like it is a curse. Maybe I'll unpack the concept of a demographic dividend a bit, and why it is a curse for some African countries, and why is it bringing about economic productivity in other countries. Now, the demographic dividend says that when you have a good number of youth in a country, when you have a good number of working people in a country, and you have less people under the age of 15, you also have a less number of people over the age of 65. Now, these two brackets of people are actually dependent. Now, the first bracket under the age of 14, those are our kids. And the argument is that as the fertility rate is falling, which is the case, because in the 1950s, we're talking about a fertility rate of about 6.4 births per family. And now it is, particularly in South Africa, it is coming down to 2.29, meaning that we are likely to benefit from the demographic dividend. And the reason why I'm saying that it is more of a case instead of being a boost in as far as economic productivity is because of the existing challenge of unemployment, underemployment, and lower salaries. And therefore, African countries are unable to maximize the demographic dividends. The ILO, International Labour Organization, basically says that in general, we have, as Africa, we have lower rates of unemployment. Quickly, moderator, in the 3 minutes that I still have, I'll talk about training. And with regard to training, I think we need to revisit how we do training, because training is not education. What I do in the classroom, I cannot replicate that and do it in a training room. And my argument is that apart from the approach, even the assessment that we're doing, we need to look at them. And I'm talking because I'm a trainer, accredited trainer with the National School of Government. I don't know where is the big man from the National School of Government. But my argument quickly is that with regard to the evaluation of the success of training, we need to do it differently. Instead of doing tick boxes after training, happiness, everybody is happy, then we can move on to say the training was successful. We need to go back to the supervisors. We need to go back to the work environment and check whether those people that we have trained, are they bringing a difference in as far as the workplace is concerned. Then we can talk about a resilient, a capable state in as far as delivery is concerned. The last aspect is the commodification of knowledge. You know, knowledge is for sale. And Africans or people in developing countries are actually bearing the brand. And sometimes, as professors and lecturers, maybe we are also to blame. And what do I mean? Knowledge that we create is quickly being put behind paywalls. You see a very brilliant article on the internet as a student, as a lecturer, you can't access it. And I can tell you, even for me, some of the articles that I've written, I can't access them. My own knowledge, I can't access it. And when you look at the rand-dollar exchange, it becomes even worse, because with the rand and other currencies in Africa, when you have to translate and you want to buy that article of yours, it becomes very expensive, because you are now thinking about a plate of food for your children on the table. So I'll wrap. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. You'll be pleased to know that following the GNU, the value of the rand has since gained weight against the major currencies. One hopes that that weight is sustained, but we get worried the longer it takes for the president to announce his cabinet. Yeah. But thanks very much, Prof, for sharing with us some snippets on what you call capital dividend. Yeah, you mean capital dividend or demographic dividend. Yeah, big words there. And also interesting to know that South Africa's contribution to human capital, is going down with birth rates going down from 6.4 per family to 2. That is concerning, because I'm worried that 10 years, 15 years down the line, we won't have young people in this country. We may have to start importing them. Wow. I want to call upon the next presenter to join us. Dr. Sakela, please come through.
Good morning, colleagues. How are you doing today? Great, great, great. I'm just wanting to expand on what you discussed yesterday. We brought our colleague from National Disaster Management Center. Today, Valerie was part of the team that evaluated South Africa in terms of state resilience. He was focusing more on the Disaster Management Center. I was sitting in the call center trying to coordinate, and he wanted specific information. So this is live experience data that was collected 2 years ago. Basically, you mentioned 4 objectives that they were looking at. One of them is to deal with policy and legislation, infrastructure investment, the question of knowledge management, and conscientizing or advocacy of the community. So the examples that I will be giving you are examples that have enabled South Africa since '94 to prepare for disasters or to be in a better position to respond to disasters of whatever nature. You recall in '95, South Africa hosted the Rugby World Cup, which we were lucky to win against New Zealand at Ellis Park. That process enabled South Africa to review its infrastructure in terms of readiness. Although most of the infrastructure came from the old South Africa, but the methodology is the same, or was the same at the time in terms of looking at your mission critical statement systems, ensuring the readiness in terms of being able to respond to whatever challenges. Those of you who can still remember, at the turn of the millennium, we had what we called Y2K, and the government as well had to look at the mission-critical systems, because from a technology point of view, there was fear that at the turn of the century, there was going to be some issues with technology. If you are flying from here to New York, midway, there's a changeover, there could be a challenge with the systems. Although nothing happened, that is not the point. The point is that we were forced at the time to look at the mission-critical systems, not only from a technology point of view, but also in terms of infrastructure. I remember I was with the city of Tshwane at the time. We had to look at all the basic infrastructure, report to COCTA. At the time, it was called Department of Provincial and Local Government. There were specific regulations that were passed so that we could report our readiness. So although nothing happened, but we were in a position to know what was our strengths and weaknesses as far as those areas are concerned. Then you remember 9/11 happened and the two Twin Towers fell in New York. I think it was 2001. One of the implications of that is the cost of insurance went up because the underwriters, as you know, most of them are based in the US and Europe, meaning that our government had to review the insurance portfolio, especially on items that have to deal with infrastructure because they are the most expensive ones. And we had to review the risk, which talks to one of the objectives that Dr. Valerie spoke to. Then in 2006, I'm just highlighting key events that forced the government to look at its own resilience. In 2006, South Africa was ready to host the Rugby World Cup, meaning that we had to invest in infrastructure, amongst others, internalize that in terms of legislation and regulations. Unfortunately, German won the bid by one vote. There was that dissenting vote from New Zealand. You remember that? There was a guy called Dempsey. It was alleged that he received something, and he changed his vote at the last moment. But that is not the point at this stage. The point is that South Africa was ready in 2006 to host the World Cup, or FIFA World Cup, in terms of the FIFA standards. So when we eventually hosted the FIFA World Cup in 2010, it was even better because we had more time to go through those systems in terms of the hosting of the World Cup. So there were a lot of other events that we hosted in between, but I'm just highlighting those in terms of the objectives, Valerie, that you have highlighted. So when COVID came, you saw the role that was played by our academia as far as the knowledge is concerned and the coordination that happened. And you also saw the role of the private sector in terms of the infrastructure. And we were forced to look at our governance systems in terms of corruption because the presidency had to set up some sort of a ring-fenced fund that was led by the private sector. So although there was issues with the confidence in government at the time, the private sector came to the party and managed a fund that was able to enable South Africa to withstand the challenges of COVID. And my colleague did highlight yesterday in terms of the social relief grant of 350 that is still in place right now. So that's basically the life experiences that, as far as that is concerned. So I would like to emphasize the message that my colleague articulated yesterday in terms of preparation and investment. So by the time that event happens, you have already have that infrastructure, that basic infrastructure in place. Also the role of our academia. Because of our history, we have got a diversity of people and we have got a lot of talent as far as academia is concerned in terms of sequencing. Our academia were able to take that leading role and share with the world. In fact, we were leading in terms of that. it's one of the things that are covered in the second generation review that was undertaken. And we undertook that review because our president at the time was serving a 2-year term as the chairperson of the African Peer Review Forum from 2000 to 2002. So we had to ensure that we complete that review during the term our president was the chairperson of the APR Forum. And we managed to see that through with the support of the Continental Secretariat. We had a group of academia who rendered their services pro bono. That's why I was asking about my missing colleague. Fortunately, Professor Miller is here, because that is the time that we should have had them on board. We can talk about design of the curriculum, but we're talking about now. So I wanted to have them now. We can talk about later what is their curriculum at the Thabo Mbeki School, and that is the aspect that I was looking at. So the report that was compiled made South Africa, therefore, to be the first country to be peer-reviewed on this 5th thematic area of state resilience to shocks and disasters. That's why we are trying to share as much as we can as far as that is concerned, because we're the first country then to be exposed to that methodology. And also we became the 5th country to undertake the second generation review. In fact, Nigeria and South Africa were peer reviewed at the same time. So strictly speaking, Nigeria and South Africa became collectively the fourth country to undertake the second generation review. Reviews are expensive by their nature. There are countries that have joined but have not had the capability, the infrastructure, to even undertake the first review. So we are always ready to share with those that would like us to share as far as that is concerned. As I've indicated yesterday, we have a national plan of action we are implementing, and we take these governance issues in terms of APRM seriously. Without further ado, within my budget, we're very strict with the budget in terms of financial, also in terms of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sokela, for bringing a budget concept there. You're very good with time budgets. I'm sure it translates very well into financial budgets where you hail from, and that you can share your expertise in that regard with our municipalities. This is your time, by the way. With our municipalities and other constituencies of public service to manage their budgets, whatever budgets they are, and get that to trickle down to the quality of service that they deliver to us. Our 4th speaker, what happened? Oh. Okay, so Dr. Sokela was actually is actually two in one. So you can so the 4th speaker is in him. So he has spoken in 2 voices. So yeah, thank you very much to all of you gentlemen for some wonderful perspectives there. Let me remind you again the theme that they were addressing, which is state resilience, institutional capacity, public service efficiency towards sustainable growth. So for me, I would like to put together all of what they have said and see how they filter through to sustainable growth, because the theme says towards sustainable growth, which essentially means that the transmission mechanism to sustainable growth is seen in state resilience, institutional capacity, public service efficiency, and within that, Professor Mello talked about what did you call it? That dividend, human capital dividend or something like that, where we leverage on the human capital that we have. And I think it's very important that we engage these three gentlemen and ask questions or share comments in response to their presentations. The floor is yours. Any questions, any comments, subtractions or additions? Mr. Program Director, please, let's get going.
Good morning, Program Director and Moderator, and all senior colleagues and all protocol observed. Yes, thank you for an insightful morning on the discussions that we have put. There are inferences on the theme of issues of sustainability and resilience. I don't know how far are we as a people. I liked what Prof. Milo said, to help the young ones coming up to be conscious from a young age. That is very commendable. But further, Prof. Milo spoke of government bonds where we can the public can purchase that. The question that I'm having in practical terms, who affords that? We are also encouraged to save. What do you save? Because if you look at our issues of creditness and indebtedness of people in Africa, it's appalling. Prof. Scott, our SG, mentioned the other day about the issue of that people in his country, most of them are professors, and education is fashionable there. And we also appreciate that we are the richest continent in terms of minerals, but yet people are suffering in our country. If you look at South Africa as a case in point, there's an ordinary human being who's taxed 45%, and yet companies and those who mine our minerals are taxed only 28%, if not 27%. So the skewness there, who's rich between an individual and an institution. So how is government addressing issue of sustainability? Is it sustainable to tax people that much? We are not opposed to citizens paying tax.
On that tax note, Prof, I shall stop you there.
Let me summarize just quickly.
To 10 seconds.
Yes.
Thank you.
So my issue is the following, is that if we are to talk of issues of resilience and sustainability, let us look at the injustice done to our minerals that are happening in the country and how citizens are being milked by governments. Let me stop there. I had something more, but I will stop.
Over to you. Over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comment? Program Director.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. Professor Melo, I just want to say thank you for bringing some of us finally into this discussion, because everything so far has been so over my head. But because I'm also in education and training, you kind of spoke my language today. So I'm like, okay, now I can say something. So thank you for that. You touched on education, and the Prof at the back also spoke about the education of citizens. I would like to perhaps ask about how do we create a learning generation? Perhaps not an educated one, but a learning one. So I have a case study. I'm very biased to higher education and basically education in the adult space more than I am on the foundation phase. No offense to the foundation phase teachers. But I feel like foundation phase is for the future, but for now, there's teenagers, there's young adults, and there's the older generation. And I've got two examples. I'm so sorry, Prof. My parents are elderly, both born in South Africa, in the townships of Alexandra. My mom and dad are not educated. I think their highest was standard 5, and they got access to smartphones. And unfortunately, it's a pain on me because every time there's something that needs to be downloaded, I'm being called to sort this issue out. My mom loves YouTube, Pinterest. She Googles everything. Her status updates are even better than mine. She is like on point there. My dad, on the other hand, loves to speak English and has that English rolling accent, and a very broken one that for that matter. And when you look at the cell phone interactions between the two of them, you see an example of a learning generation as opposed to an educated one. So that's my first case. My second case, thank you.
Out of how many cases?
Just two. Thank you, Dr. Sokela, for taking us through the historical events that happened in the country that related to disaster. You also brought in the human element, and it triggered for me something that happened in 1994. I'm exposing my age now. In 1994, prior to the elections, there was a TV show that was a voter education show where people were taught through the SABC what it means to get into a democracy, what it means to vote. And I remember one of the taglines was, "Your vote is your secret." I mean, that is how good that production is, because I still remember it very well, and I was not even eligible to vote at that stage. In your talk yesterday, and even today, you spoke about how important it is to prepare for disasters. And I don't know who back then, in 1994, who prepared citizens, especially those that were not allowed to vote, to be ready to vote. And I look at all the voting periods that came afterwards. There was no voter education. And I'm thinking, at some point prior to 1994, we were going towards a learning generation, a learning country, where everybody, regardless of background, was being prepared for something that was coming. But now we have all these disasters and these big events that have potential to turn into disasters, whether it's holding the World Cup, you know. But I find that somewhere, where's that voter education or that education that relates to citizens so that we're able to prepare for things in advance?
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you very much. We're going to take our last question from the professor sitting there. Two questions. By the way, we are now eroding our tea time, and the knock-on effect is on our time to conclude this seminar, which is scheduled to end at 1300 hours. So no one is going to touch on our lunchtime, as I believe.
I'm going to be quick.
Okay, let's proceed. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm Professor Celestine Johnny Stierman. I neglect yesterday to introduce myself. Colleagues, I've read an article, and I just Googled it again now, just I just want for the panel to listen to to attentively listen to what I'm going to share with you now. I've been reading this article for several months. I'm actually trying to memorize it. The article is titled, "The Shocking State of Education in South Africa." Then I just want to highlight or mention to you, Professor, you spoke a lot about education in the beginning. It was one of your emphasis. Can you please also go Google and read the following article for me? Because it's got a lot of insight into what's actually happening in our education system currently in South Africa. The article was published 29 March 2023. The 4 shocking findings were let me just quickly get it. It states that after a year of school, more than 50% of our grade 1 learners don't know all the letters of the alphabet. Then secondly, 78% of our grade 4 learners could not read for meaning in any language, like I mentioned yesterday. Then out of 39 participating countries, guess what? South Africa, us. We are our grade 9 learners. Remember, our grade 9 learners are going into the FET phase, where they should choose subjects for their future careers. They did a test designed based on the grade 8's performance. We were placed second last in mathematics proficiency, and last place in science. That is now in Africa. Then COVID-19 lockdowns devastated learning in South Africa. Experts believe the average 10-year-old knows less than the average 9-year-old before the pandemic. Then what's actually most shocking is it also indicates that many countries poorer than South Africa outperform us in international tests like Morocco, Egypt, and Albania. We are not on the standard with those countries when it comes to our education system.
And the last
after
shock?
I've read, no, there's no more shocks. And after I've read all these, this is now based on findings and research. Don't you think that our education system, we are in a disaster? It's a disaster, our education system. If we read, we've got all the curriculum transformations, we've got all these brilliant initiatives. But according to me, and according to the researchers in the findings, I believe that our education system is also in disaster. That is just my input for this seminar. And we should really look into initiatives, programs, how to improve our education system, because this is not being sucked out of our thumbs.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Prof. Stierman, as a school principal, she engages or she works with learners from grade 1 all the way to grade 12. So she is speaking from personal experience. Let me say, her comments are based on a true story. You know? So yeah, thank you very much for your perspectives. Gentlemen, may I please ask you to respond to the questions and comments? Oh, there's the last one. Okay, let's go.
Yes,
yeah.
Prof. You had recognized me, program director.
Okay.
Mine's a quick one. Is the program director who yesterday said that, and I agree with him, that corruption is a disaster.
So I want to find out from APRM, in your disaster resilience, readiness, and all the interventions, are you moving towards treating corruption as such? Because it's actually killing our economies. We are not doing as we should. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That one is a template of what is called a quick one. He said, mine is a quick one, very quick indeed. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I will ask you to respond in any order. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the questions. I've got two questions, one from my sister there and from Dr. Mataiwa. With regard to voter education, my colleague to my right, I'm happy that he's sitting next to me because it validates what I was saying yesterday and what I'm going to say now, because we worked very closely on the second generation review of South Africa. With regard to voter education, it talks directly to the first thematic area of APRM in terms of democracy and political governance. And it's in our interest that to strengthen that thematic area, we look at interventions that will ensure that there's proper voter education. And the IEC, the Independent Electoral Commission, have got a clear mandate on that. But the IEC do not work on their own. They work collaboratively with government. So it's then incumbent upon government to approach the IEC so that in the process of instituting those voter education programs, we work together with the IEC. For instance, we got our National Governing Council accredited to be observers, and we were able to provide a report in the previous election, not the recent ones, the one before that, so that we are able to give specific recommendations to the IEC from the APRM point of view in terms of the interventions that we recommend. So we will be able then to take this input and feed it into the IEC processes and going forward. So thank you very much for that input. Dr. Mataiwa, in terms of corruption, when we undertook our second generation review, it coincided with the Zondo Commission. And the work that the president had to do in terms of the recommendations of the Zondo Commission interacts directly with what was recommended in the APRM. So we are reporting on that. And the report of the president in terms of how he's going to deal with the Zondo Commission recommendations, that was submitted to the national legislature. We are tracking that report, and not much has been done, but we hope that with the seventh administration, something will be done. In our National Plan of Action, Dr. Mataiwa, what the National Assembly has to actualize, we have deposited a letter with the previous speaker of the National Assembly from the APRM recommendations point of view, National Plan of Action. We are going to follow up with the new Speaker of the National Assembly, because although it's a different arm of the state, from the APRM point of view, we deal with all the arms of the state in the execution of those recommendations. So we will be reporting to the Continental Secretariat on a regular basis in terms of what is happening, and they are tracking that in terms of the protocol, because they have to report to the eminent persons as well. So that's something that we can track. What is outstanding is for us to declare it formally as a disaster as well. But we can just treat it as such without even declaring. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Excellencies. I think I've got one question, not directly, not specifically directed to me, but I can try to answer. I think there was a question from Dr. Matt from for your office. Yeah, the Busieka is the one. Yes. So I just want to use two examples for you to understand what was being done. If recently, last year, APRM conducted at the request of the AU member states, we drafted what we call the Africa Governance Report on unconstitutional changes of government. So when we received the mandate, we drafted a questionnaire, and ideally we thought the findings will relate only to elections and so on. But when you look at if you look at the report as it's available on the internet, key findings that came out strongly are, for example, corruption in the mining sector. And we use 5 countries: Comoros, the Republic of Guinea, Sierra Leone, Chad, and another country. Yeah. So, the point I want to make here is, I suggest we understand the whole system, because if we define the disaster as a serious disruption of the function of a community that exceeds its capacity to cope using its own resources. So corruption is not the disaster. What is produced is the disaster. But corruption should be seen as one of the factors that explain the actual disaster. I don't know if I make myself understood.
Yes, Doc, you make yourself very clear.
Yeah.
Prof?
All right. Thank you. I got 3 questions. The first one was from my colleague who spoke about consciousness at an early age and the government boards, whether we can be able to afford them, and the level of indebtedness. I believe that there are people who can afford government bonds. And maybe it is more also about lowering the threshold in terms of the minimum amount that one can contribute. With regard to indebtedness, it goes 2 ways. Indebtedness because your salary is very low and you're trying to survive. And then there's also indebtedness that is more about irresponsible spending, where I live way beyond my means. So those who live beyond their means perhaps are the ones that need to be helped. Now, with regard to the injustice relating to the minerals, I think we've spoken a lot as Africans and South Africans about beneficiation. But it's not happening. But if you look at what is happening in the Sahel region of Africa, where young military leaders are saying enough is enough, are saying to France, for instance, you have always had a stranglehold on us, our minerals. You were colonizing us even beyond colonization. And they actually rose up and say, it's not going to happen anymore. So it is also goes back to the politicians, those that we elect in power. Do they understand the power that they have as lawmakers in terms of making sure that the minerals are benefiting members of the public? The 45%, 21% in terms of the individuals and as well as the multinational companies, I agree that is still more of injustice, because the richer are the ones who should be paying more, and in particular the multinational companies. The second question was from an educator. How do we create a learning nation? And she gave 2 case studies relating to parents. In fact, I believe that it was harder to study when I was at primary school and high school. I didn't have a smartphone. The kids of late, my son likes to test me, maybe because I'm a professor. He go to Google and look at other things, and then he comes back and asks me questions, and I have to answer. So I'm writing a test on a daily basis at home. So, so we live in an era where information is available. But then we should also be able to distinguish information that is good for purposes of an individual and young people's development, and information that is more superficial, that is misleading to the young ones. So there's good, there's also bad in as far as the era that we live in, and we see it with also students writing their theses and assignments, that the temptation is always there, that the assignment is due tomorrow. Maybe I can cut and paste quickly and then submit. And then we pick it up much later. The last one, Madam Stirman, she said she's a professor, but I'll respectfully call you an armchair professor. I'll tell you why later. I would agree with you that we have a disaster, and it is our responsibility, all of us, not you educators, all of us, because you educators sometimes you feed the kids what you are given, but those who are giving you, if they give you the right stuff in terms of educating and reorienting the mind of the African child, then we should be able to go a long way. And as a professor, I'm always willing to learn. I'll check that article that you referred to. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much. Yes, very briefly, sir.
I'm in the public service, but I'm quite well versed on issues of education in general. I think from the National Development Plan, these challenges have been diagnosed and interventions are in place. In terms of the ECD, the early childhood development, for instance, the shifting of that functions to basic education and putting more emphasis in the 2 years prior to the first year of formal education. So there's a lot of work that is being done, and there's a lot of investment that is happening. We just need to ensure that the institutional part, the capabilities, the commitments, the inequalities, because that picture is diverse as well. Those who are most affected are those that don't have alternatives. So the strengthening of that part has been identified and is being addressed. I think that is the most important aspect. Education is a very complex issue, and we need to be working collaboratively to focus in that area. So those studies are subject to discussion, because there is a study every day that you read about. So we need to interrogate that, because most of the time those things are overemphasized, because you don't know what the motives of those people who came up with those studies. And if those studies are validated in the context in which that information is being presented. So I think that is just the aspect that I would like to put forward on behalf of our colleagues in basic education, because that is the same picture more or less in higher education. There are challenges all the time. The issues are known and they are being addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc. I think on that note, I will hand over back to the program director. But before I do that, I just want to share with you the top 10 corrupt countries in Africa. Number 1, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan. Imagine, North Sudan, South Sudan. Something is grossly wrong there. Libya, Eritrea, Guinea-Bissau, Angola, Burundi, Zimbabwe, and lastly, Democratic Republic of the Congo. And this is top 10, but this does not mean that anything below that is better. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's work together for the sustainable growth of Africa. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Profs, Docs, for the discussion. I think, yeah, Prof. Chisasa, we're happy not to be in that top 10 because as South African citizens, we think that we should be number one with the rate of corruption that's happening in our country. But if we're not in the top 10, I think, yeah, we're safe. We need to relook at our own situation. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to have tea now up until 11, and then we'll come back for our, hey, these words. That's the problem with academics. Summanation of proceedings. I don't know what that means, but I think the person who's the rapporteur will explain to us what summanations are. For now, let's break for tea. We'll see you back at 11. Thank you. The powers invested in me. One of our PhD colloquium colleagues had missed their flights, but they're here today. So we're just gonna give them like 5 minutes or so that they can just give us an overview of their study. And then after that, we'll then have a rapporteur report by Dr. Buseka, who will then come after that to give us a report on the seminar that we then had. And then after that, we'll then continue on to the next item on the program. So I would like to call Mrs. Ayeyemi to the stage just to give us a overview of her study. 5 minutes already. So when I stand, just know
Please
that.
don't stand.
When I stand up, just.
Good morning, everyone. I want to appreciate everybody for having me here today. And it's been a lot of rough journey to get to South Africa, but I'm happy that I finally made it. I just want to first introduce myself properly. My name is Ayeyemi. I'm a PhD student from Babcock University, Ogun State, Nigeria. My area of specialization is marketing communications, and my area of interest is the branding strategies. Well, I'm a marketer, and I'm interested in seeing how we can bring academics into the business world and then be able to impact the business world with our researches and all. So today I'll be talking briefly on my presentation, branding strategies and organizational performance of selected food and beverage manufacturing companies in Lagos State, Nigeria. Achieving organizational performance is the key determinant for the manufacturing sector, which is my research context. And then it should be noted that manufacturing in Africa has been challenged in many ways, especially with the nature of our government, due to political instability, poor leadership, and host of other inadequate infrastructure, and so many others issues that we are battled with in terms of manufacturing in Africa generally. So my focus is to see how branding strategies can help position the manufacturing sector, especially the food and beverage manufacturing sector in Lagos State, Nigeria, in order to gain a good share of the market. Our focus on this, for this gathering is to discuss the exogenous shocks and disaster. And we know that recently the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war has really affected the manufacturing globally, not just in Africa. And that has caused a lot of disruption in supply chain, has also given rise to inflation and so many other factors. However, we are looking at opportunities where we can have companies or organizations that can withstand different shocks and disaster that happens in Africa. So that's the whole essence of our gathering, and I'm hoping that my presentation should be able to address some of the things. For Africa, it was reported by African Development Bank that Africa only contributes 1.9% of its to the global manufacturing output, and this is a very poor percentage considering the our population of 1.5 billion, and then all we can contribute is 1.9% to manufacturing. We are more or less like a consuming continent. We need to do better by producing more, and then so that we can have a sustainability. Any shocks that happen in any part of the world affects Africa because we are relying on one continent or the other. So it is time that we begin to look inwards and see how we can position ourselves, ensure that our brands get out there so that we can be confident on the kind of brands that we're promoting at our local markets. So the initiative by African Continental Free Trade Area, the agreement signed, is supposed to enhance relationship between all the African countries in order to promote ease of trading and transactions. However, despite all this optimism, we've realized that foreign multinationals have taken a good chunk of our businesses in Africa. As a matter of fact, the local brands in Africa only able to achieve 14% of the brand share, while 86% of all the products in our market in Africa is dominated by the foreign organizations. So what it means is that anything that happens to the foreign companies, if they pull out, then we're in trouble. So we need to begin to look inwards and begin to see how we position our local brands. And when these people come around, they take our wealth, they take our human capital and natural resources, and when they want to leave, they leave with all of it. And when they take it, we are left and we're backward again, and we have to refix it again. And that's why it seems like we're moving at a particular rate, and we're backward at a larger rate. So I appreciate that we look in that direction. Let me just say that so many studies have investigated the effect of the organizational performance of manufacturing companies. We focus on innovation, sustainability, and market orientation, and a host of others. However, there are few studies that have investigated branding strategies on organizational performance of food and beverage manufacturing companies. Some of the problems identified in this sector is decline in sales, decline in profits, shrinking market share, and then inability to sustain competitive advantage. So my research is focused on to determine the effect of branding strategies on organizational performance of selected food and beverage manufacturing companies in Lagos State, Nigeria. And my research questions and research hypotheses have been defined in this, developed in line with the objective. The scope is to investigate the effect of branding strategies and its impact on organizational performance of selected food and beverage manufacturing companies, with the target on the employees for the survey to be carried out, and the total population of 2035 has been identified. This study is significant to the management of the food and beverage manufacturing companies, as it provides them, enlightens them on the appropriate branding strategies that will support their performance in the market, and also help them achieve their organizational goal. It is also significant to our government, as this points out the areas where the sector needs the support of the government for them to be able to contribute better to the GDP of our dear Africa. And of course, this study will be is significant to academics, as it is filling an existing gap and will also be a foundation for future studies. There was a literature review which covered, oh my God, I was supposed to have a full time, but I just want to bring to our attention that we we cannot help but help ourselves. There's nobody that's going to save Africa. You know, I keep saying that a lot in my country, that nobody's going to save Nigeria except we save ourselves. So when they come to help us, they give us 5% and they take the 95% away from us. So it is important that we begin to see and synergize our efforts to ensure that we bring value, we create value for Africa through our manufacturing and putting a brand that can be acceptable in other continents. We should be exporting products from Africa, not just the raw materials. It is so sad that we realize that our raw materials are exported and they are not in finished form. So they take our raw materials, they package it and bring it back for us to buy at a higher value. And that is a problem that we need to address. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm very, very grateful.
Stand here. I think as the program director, I'm going to abuse some of my powers and ask if there is any input, any questions that the audience might have. We might maybe limit it to 3 and then give Mrs. Ayeyemi some feedback or some questions that she can answer, and then we can then move on to the report. I think that would be fair. Are there any comments, questions, suggestions, or congratulations? Okay, Prof.
Thank you very much for that whirlwind of a presentation.
Thank you.
Quite speedy indeed. But I think it's interesting that we talk about the food and beverages industry or sector being a non-performing sector, or the performance being in decline. I'm actually surprised because, especially on the beverages side, because people consume a lot of beverages. I know that South Africa, for instance, is one of the top, arguably top 3, top 5 in the world when it comes to consumption of beverages. So I'm surprised that there's that other statistic. But I want to talk about the Africa Confederation of Free Trade or Free Trade Area, whatever the correct naming is. How can this be? How can we use the possibility of having a single African passport to facilitate trade, intra-Africa trade? That's one. Secondly, what is the research gap in this particular study? I may have missed it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I would first address the first, okay.
Are there any other questions? Cool, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, thank you very much, sir. First of all, the food and beverage manufacturing companies are producing. They're producing, they're not having a decline, but the performance. So when the cost of production is so high and the returns becomes lower, so that's where the challenges are. So a lot of them are struggling to survive. So when you grow this year, you decline next year because of so many factors, especially political decisions that affect their inputs and all that. So it is not that they are not inexistent, but it is easy for them to fall away, because if they are not making money, then they are going to, at some point, decline in their entire performance. So we're saying that there's a decline because the cost of production. For example, a company like Nestle made a major loss because, that's Nestle Nigeria, made a major loss because of foreign exchange. They had a lot of loans in foreign exchange, and in paying back those loans, they had a major loss as a result of that. So they have to grapple with whatever they have to be able to survive. And that's the challenges we are having. We need to have a government that supports all areas of manufacturing so that they can, for example, the AFTA that you talk about, the free trade area agreement that was signed is supposed to enhance the facilitation of movement of commodities between Africans. And then we need to be able to work, exchange our currency directly without having to cross it through dollars. And by the time you do all those exchanges, you've already, reduced your income in that regard. And apart from that, we also mentioned that our passports, to be able to, I don't want to even talk about the challenges I had to face to get to South Africa. And you can imagine me having to go to Asia first before coming to South Africa. That for me is mind-blowing. So I think there are a lot of things that we need to do. What delayed me was my visa. To get a visa for South Africa, I shouldn't be delayed that much. In 24 hours at most, I should be able to get my visa because I'm an African. So it shouldn't be a barrier for me to come into any other Africa. And I was coming for a prestigious event like this. I have to give a lot of justification to prove that. These are the things that are setting us back. We need to begin to see progressively how we can work together and make things happen for Africa. And I don't know, I think I missed out okay, you said the gaps. Oh, there are a lot of gaps because definitely there are a lot of studies that have investigated in organizational performance in different aspects, innovation, sustainability, but there are very few studies that have investigated branding strategies, how different strategies you put on your brands can help you position your brand in the market. So that's basically what I'm addressing through my research. Thank you, sir. Okay, I'm looking at for branding strategies, I'm looking at brand positioning, brand development, brand extension, co-branding, and brand licensing. And for my organizational performance, I'm looking at the market share, sales performance, profitability, competitive advantage, and customer satisfaction. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Cool. All right. Another round of applause for Mrs. Oyeyemi Adeyemi. All right. All right. So now we can then move on to the report. I will be flexing more of my MC muscle by changing things around. So your program is no longer valid. Mine is the one that's real. So please don't look at the one that you have and compare to what I'm doing. What I'm doing is right. What you're thinking is wrong. So please, let's not clash when it comes to that. So next up, I would like to call Dr. Buseka, who will then give us a rapporteur report of the 8th research seminar. Round of applause for him. Thank you. Oh, yeah. No.
Presentation mode.
Oh, you said 20, right?
25.
25. Yeah. Oh, that's fine. So 10:35.
10:35.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. So it's all right. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and congratulations for acquiring dictatorial powers. We're standing on the established protocols, but since Professor Nkomo, the host, was acknowledged in absentia, we say you are welcome, sir. And while you are away, they took very good care of us. They gave us a lot of food, very delicious food. And food is important for Africans, you know. You have to worry whether you'll eat or not. Colleagues, I'm here to present the summaries, only the key issues. So it's not a detailed report. My name is Matayo Buseka from DPSA. So we are on the 8th, I'll go through it quickly. We are on the 8th seminar seminar series, if you like. And the theme, as you know, is cultivating collective resilience. Resilience, that's integrating governance and public administration in crisis management through social capital and community-engaged HR policies. That's why throughout the presentation you had the word community coming through all the time, because we want to do that engagement. And we are here at this beautiful venue, Ngorong, and UNISA is our host. And we are very happy and grateful to that hosting. So the 8th annual seminar has this focus and goals. The objective was to unravel the complexities and explore untapped opportunities within government and public administration. The commitment is deep dive into principles of good governance and effective public administration, and to enrich these principles with social capital and innovative HR policies. And there is also that aspect of enhancement of societal resilience, which will address global uncertainties, as well as highlight collaboration between public sector entities, communities, and organizations. Now, there are pathways and the vision for the seminar series. That's the last 7 and now the 8th. And these pathways are to overcome contemporary crises, that's illuminate strategies for public sector and community collaboration, and to navigate and surmount multifaceted challenges. Our vision for the future for this seminar series is to forge a resilient future with strong governance structures, ensure preparedness to adopt, sustain, and advance adversity, and promote societal well-being and stability in dynamic global context. A few of our countries were represented here. We had Uganda, we have Botswana, Namibia, and Ghana, Kenya, and the host. You see, we have East Africa, we have Southern Africa, and West Africa. Unfortunately, we didn't have Central Africa. But if your country is there and you are not mentioned, please let me know so that we can acknowledge that. Now, then we have the first theme here, which spoke to the imperative of state legitimacy in managing risks and disasters in Africa. And there we had a keynote address by David Omuzofo, who discussed resource stress, vulnerabilities, and future challenges. He emphasized the importance of state legitimacy derived from this provision of basic rights and services, regular high-quality elections, good governance, and meeting citizen needs. He highlighted the role of established democracies in preparing nations. He also cited the SADC protocol and in particular Article 21 of the Declaration of Human Rights, and made some recommendations here, which are to strengthen states' capacity, translate government policies into services, to mitigate political and economic exclusion, foster civil society and government collaboration, and to replace the rule of man with rule of law. Conclusions being that there's need for resilient states to handle crises like Ebola. And further recommendations to support his thesis were that there's need to strengthen that state capacity, that's enhance the ability of states to effectively manage resources and deliver services. We have had a lot of discussion around Africa resources not being managed to the benefit of the people. Also translate government policies into services, that is ensure that government policies are implemented in a manner that benefits citizens, address political and economic exclusion, thus compacting the capture of African systems by elites, and ensure inclusive governance, because the people in this room are part of the elites, so you have captured the state. And also create space between civil society and government. That's foster a collaboration or collaborative relationship between civil society and government to rebuild trust, address security implications of a young population. You see what's happening in Kenya, General Z, General Z, yeah, I got it right, who are agitating, and they are achieving a lot of concession, extracting a lot of concession from the government, because they are tired of the other generations are like in a slumber, or they are part of the elites. So they are taking their destiny into their own hands. So in this case, recognize security risks posed by predominantly young population and to work to mitigate them. A huge population of young people who are out of job is a serious security risk. Rule of law, replace the rule of men with the rule of law. We spoke about that. State and nation building, focus on building strong and resilient states and national institutions. So we had an input from Stellenbosch University who emphasized the importance of access to higher education and student funding. They also have aligned efforts with SDG 1 to support impoverished students. Question the role of universities. What is the university good for? That's the question they posed. And they say they are committed to sharing infrastructure with industry and facilitating knowledge transfers among the communities. They outlined game changers for 2023 and discussed, among others, establishment of an interdisciplinary framework. And this is a trend across universities. And that is, of course, the future, that we are more interdisciplinary as we evolve. They also have focused efforts in epidemic response, and they support for postgraduate studies. And also we had an input from the ambassador, the Russian ambassador to South Africa, His Excellency Mr. Rogochev, who mentioned that not every state can easily afford sufficient potential in this area. Also, he spoke about advanced machinery, water, and food, which does not improve the living standard in a short run. He says the state should have instruments to protect their own people, costly but necessary. Russia is presiding over the BRICS. He mentioned that Russia's security has to take some of the hard decisions, and also the vaccine, which Russia is also involved in. And then we had messages of solidarity from various partners. We had one from, I think it's Professor Maggie Sopan, I think the name is not spelled right, from Asadapan, who highlighted the significance of interdisciplinary approaches and collaborative efforts. He also focused on addressing complex issues like epidemic response and postgraduate education. From APRM, Dr. Yao discussed pilot programs for state resilience and emphasized the necessary mitigation and adaptation strategies to avoid disasters, stressed the importance of proactive measures to strengthen state capacities. An input also from Dr. Maja from NSG, who identified 3 challenges to resilience and fragility: state capacity, COVID pandemics, floods, and election aftermath. He also highlighted the need for a robust state mechanism to navigate these challenges effectively. And then we had also an input from the University of Pretoria, Dr. Van Dijk, who provided information on School of on SPMA at the University of Pretoria, and she detailed research focus areas for the department, which is policy and structures, innovation and behavior, and public administration education. She also emphasized the importance of mutual learning and shared experiences in advancing public management practices. The other input was the UNISA representative who represented Dr. Siposiso Vilingomo, and since he's here, if she did not represent you well, please raise your hand so that I can correct that. But she spoke about the school's mission to reshape state and private sector engagements. She also stressed the need for collaboration in strengthening institutions. She highlighted issues such as grant corruption and inefficiencies in many states. She committed to partnering with like-minded entities to drive sustainable development through education and education reform. Lastly, of course, that's the last input before we had a statement from a welcome statement by Dr. George Scott, APAM Secretary General, who provided a history and of the establishment of the seminar series 8 years ago, and committed to and noted that we have also mentioned the enhancements in seminar quality with UNISA's support, and thank you very much, UNISA, for that. Innovation, especially the PhD colloquium, that's a very important innovation. It's something new, we have to acknowledge that. Also, there's also a focus on state resilience amid economic instability, poor service delivery, and corruption. You can see corruption is a recurring theme, and mentions the use of seminars for collaborative learning and sustainable development strategies. And of course, there were those other messages. I think I went through that. Now I go to the the second sub-theme, which is policy, legislative, and institutional framework for resilient societies. In this area, the key messages there were that social capital in governance and crisis management, where the input analyzed the impact of trust, networks, and social cohesion on effective crisis response and recovery, and also the theme provided a global perspective on the role of social capital in governance. The other input was on digital governance and resilience. Here they explored the nexus between digital governance and public administration resilience. And this area illustrated how technological advancement can improve government responsiveness and adaptability. Then there was a comprehensive understanding of resilient societies, where Dr. Mugai, emphasized the need for multifaceted approaches to foster resilience, highlighted that resilient societies are built on strong policies, institutions, and the active engagement of diverse stakeholders, and stressed the strategic integration of digital technologies in governance. The next sub-theme was measures for increasing investment for disaster risk reduction, I beg your pardon. And there we had an input from the APRM, where there was a reflection that APRM is a self-monitoring mechanism for good governance and sustainable development, and it is aimed at fostering policies, standards, and practices for political stability and economic growth. And the APRM process includes self-assessment, peer review, and developing a national program of action. And on the economic development challenges, The focus was on agriculture and the need for disaster mitigation and risk management, importance of increased financial investment in disaster resilience, as well as the potential for public-private partnership and innovative financing mechanism within that sector. Now, there was also an input on the South African experience, where active participation in the APRM that led to governance reforms and policy enhancement also strengthened democratic institutions and set a benchmark for other African nations. The role of traditional leaders and trust was emphasized. Here, indigenous people and traditional chiefs play a vital role in disaster management, especially in KZN. Our colleague was speaking about that, where there's continuous education and capacity building programs which are essential for preparedness. And then there was an input also on COVID pandemic impact, where significant costs in terms of expenditure and GDP decline was witnessed, and the importance of understanding financial impacts for future policy decisions. And then the other input was on utilization of indigenous knowledge, it was recognized that documenting traditional practices for disaster mitigation is important, and integration of social structures into disaster management policies. The next theme was on steps that countries are taking in building and strengthening infrastructure, critical economic sectors, governance, and social systems. In here, there was an input from open government approaches, where open government partnership promotes transparency, accountability, and inclusive governance, and represent a community of about 2 billion people worldwide, and focuses on improving public services, integrity, resource management, and corporate accountability, and also encourages countries to create action plans with specific measurable reforms. Resilience and energy finance input focused on the current OGP commitments, including resilience and climate finance reforms, emphasize transparency and effective management of climate action funds, and advocates for active citizen engagement and participatory governance to combat climate change. Now, there was also an input on precision governance, which uses detailed data to guide disaster management and targeted interventions. Also, precision governance ensures government actions are precise and effective, and it includes risk management elements like identifying vulnerabilities and implementing targeted measures. Utilization of data is important, so precision governance improves public service delivery and operational efficiency. It requires interdepartmental collaboration, proactive stakeholder engagement, and bridging the digital divide, and encourages continued research to inform government efforts and enhance resilience. On state resilience, or rather resilient state capacity, open government practices promote transparency, accountability, and citizen engagements, integrates informal mining sectors into the formal economy to enhance livelihoods, aligns mining policies with community needs and sustainable development goals. On public participation and governance, centralized portal for research to inform policy and decision-making, strategic forum for fostering participatory governance and engaging communities, emphasis on robust mechanism for local governance, precise data use, and community input in development planning. And finally on that, highlight the importance of participatory budgeting and informed planning. So there's also the PhD colloquium that was reflected on, and I'm just looking at the key issues that came through, not necessarily the individual presentation by the students. And one of the issues there was focus on philosophical and ethical dimensions of research. Emphasis was on objectivity, subjectivity, and societal influences. The key points that were highlighted there was separation from research. That is, questioning if researchers can truly separate themselves from their research. The importance of acknowledging personal and societal context. And there's also the argument between objectivity and subjectivity, where balance between objectivity and subjectivity are interrogated. Subjectivity provides valuable insights along objective data. And also there's a need to recognize moral values. That's awareness of ethical frameworks influencing research, the importance of ethical consideration for scientifically rigorous research. Further, on the same PhD colloquium, there was a discussion on reflectivity in research, where there's need for continuous examination of biases and assumptions, enhancements of credibility and depth of finding, the impact of belief systems, that's the critical examination of personal beliefs and societal norms, also ensuring comprehensive understanding of research topics. Societal norms influence also is important, where researchers are products of societal norms, and societal influence shape research agendas and outcomes. So power dynamics in research is also a key factor. So there's an importance of knowledge production influenced by power relations. Importance of addressing power imbalances for fairness and inclusivity. These are Prof here is, very technical issues around research. Anyway, I'm finishing on that one. This is the last one on that. Ensuring objectivity, so methodological rigor, transparency, and critical peer review, enhancing reliability and validity of findings, promoting social justice and equity, in which case considering the broader social impact of research, striving for outcomes that contribute to societal well-being. In conclusion, it says here that there need to be a comprehensive framework for scientifically robust and ethically responsible research, and insights are valuable for navigating contemporary academic inquiry. So our last presenter here, I think you missed that session. You should look for the report. Is a very important dialogue and some cross-pollination of ideas there. This is my last slide, and this is the last session that we had here, which was more problem analysis and solutions. The panel discussions we heard from Professor Yao Yao, whose input focused on state resilience and cited Cape Town as best practice in state resilience. He also mentioned corruption, explained rather, that corruption should be treated as one of the factors contributing to disaster, not corruption. There's a mistake there. Professor Melo here revisited educational outcomes and the need to reorient the curriculum towards innovation and entrepreneurship. I also looked at democratic dividend and a challenge, which is a challenge for unemployment and underemployment. I also asked that Africa is unable to maximize our demographic dividends, not democracy. Also revisited how training is rendered and asked that we relook at assessments. And he also questioned commodification of knowledge, which should be made readily available for development. Dr. Sokela highlighted key events that informed South Africa's disaster readiness. Key events also forced South Africa to look at all basic infrastructure. and help South Africa to assess its strengths and weaknesses. And during COVID, all stakeholders were involved: academia, private sector, government, all worked in tandem. And preparations and investment are key to success in state readiness for disaster. I thank you. That's the end of the summary. Program Director, I don't expect any questions, so I'll take my seat.
Yeah, no. If there's any questions they can ask at lunch. I don't think there should be any questions with regards to a report unless they are thinking you are reporting falsely. I would also like to say that this is not a dictatorship position, as most dictators say that this position I got by anointing, so therefore I deserve to be here. All right, so thank you very much, Doc, for the what's the word that they use here? Sorry, let me just be academic for a minute. Summation of the proceedings. Summation. Oh, okay, cool. But thank you. Summations of the proceedings of the 8th Research Seminar. I really do thank you. So we're going to move on to the next part, which was the announcements, but now it's just the culmination of closing of the research seminar. And first we're going to have, first there's an announcement with regards to the certificates. Those will be sent out digitally to your emails to show that you were here, so that you can show your employer that, the days that you took off were not, you were not in South Africa just for a holiday, or in Joburg for a holiday. No, in Pretoria for a holiday. So we'll send those certificates out digitally. Now we're in the closing ceremony of the 8th seminar, sadly, or unfortunately, or fortunately for some of us. So I'm going to call Ms. Baba Kato to come up and just give us remarks from, we've anointed her as the participant representative, so that she can just give us closing remarks with regards to the attendance of the seminar and how she experienced the whole entire thing, and how we were as UNISA and how we treated her as a guest. Ms. Kato.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Baba Kato from Ghana, and all protocols observed. So today, throughout this seminar, I've come to hear a lot from people from different parts of Africa. And some of the discussions covered APRM, precision governance, agriculture, collaboration between the private and the public sector, national monument disasters, and so many others. It's just so much, I can't cover everything. But one thing I got from the entire session was that the challenges that face one African country seem to be almost the same thing that faces another. I could easily relate with some of the challenges that were spoken about concerning even South Africa and other countries. And I realized that with collaboration and education and with exposure, these things could easily be spread across and let us learn from each other, so that we don't have to repeat the same challenges other countries face whilst implementing one or two of the interventions they came up with. So another thing I personally learned a lot from was the PhD colloquium, which covered areas of finance, ICT, education, and others. It's also opened my mind to possibilities out there, like using ICT for agriculture, for instance. And even on the topic of using ICT for healthcare, curing cancer, someone came to do a presentation on that. I thought it was really, really helpful. And like I said earlier, collaboration and exposure would help us be able to easily accumulate some of these things and use it in other countries across board. It also helps us to build and foster resilience to shocks and challenges, like I already said earlier, faced by individual countries. Collaboration helps to take care of some of these things, and in the long run, we don't have to repeat or go over the same old issues that other people are facing for other countries to also face the same thing. And on that note, I would like to end by saying that Ghana is currently undertaking a project that has to do with the planting for food and jobs. It helps with the small-scale farmers. And this is an initiative that helps the private sector and the public sector to come together to try and find ways of getting resources available to farmers to enable them to plant within the planting period, harvest and store food, and also make it available to the farmers. To the farm gates, to make it easy for people to be able to access it on the market. And I'm sure that when it's just being implemented, so I'm sure when it's finally completed and we are able to find out some of the challenges we face and the recommendations made, a presentation will be done on it to help with the agricultural sector of other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you. With the powers invested in me, again, I'm abusing powers. Ms. Ayeyemi spoke about co-marketing, right? Was it co-marketing? Brand strategies, co-marketing, so co-branding. So under the UNISA brand, I'm co-marketing one of our conferences that we're having later on in the year, 1 to 3 October, and it's the International Conference on Financial Services that is happening at the Empress Palace, which is Ekurhuleni side, where you landed at the airport. Just next to it, there's the Empress Palace. That's where the conference will be happening, 1 to 3 October, International Conference on Financial Services. And that is done by the Department of Finance, Risk, and Banking. Just to punt it out there. All right. So next, I will then have the man behind the veil who's been coordinating all of this. I suppose I could call him the main dictator. I'm just the puppet. You know how it works in Africa. Prof. Arek Bishola, just to come in and then give us a word of thanks, and then we can get into the closing remarks. If you could. Round of applause.
Please permit me to sit and stand on all the existing protocols. I don't have much to say, other than to say thank you to all of you that are here. It took so much for all of you to be here. And the University of South Africa, the College of Economic and Management Sciences, Thabo Mbeki School, all of us, the DPSA, APRAM, we all so much appreciate your presence here. Thank you. But that is not going to just stop at thank you and thank you. I'm sorry I create your indulgence. Please permit me to do this my way, please. This guy here, to some of you here, is a driver because he's been taking you everywhere, he's been driving you everywhere. It's not. He's an academic. He's my colleague. So he has made tremendous sacrifice to ensure that everything here goes smoothly. Thank you. Where's the other guy? There were two. Where is he? He stepped up. Oh, okay. Yeah, we thank him too in in absentia. I have to, Fernanda, please come here with your team. Quickly, come here with your team. I'm not saying a word until they are all here. You see, everything is well done because of them. I don't know how they did it. I led from behind. They took the leadership. Mine was I just gave them a master plan. They executed it. How they did it, I don't know. Please clap for them. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, Fernanda, they say you should take a photo. Please come. Please come. Please, our photographer. Oh, yeah, it's right there. Are you taking them photo? Is it done? Yeah, please. Now, before they leave, Kagiso, please come. That is the chairperson of their committee. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to conclude by saying that when there is no money, whatever you say is noise. It only becomes an action when there is resources behind it. On that note, I'm going to say a very big thank you to the College of Economic and Management Sciences. Dr. Marcy Shaba, she's not here. Prof. Malauzi, please let them know you. No, please. That is the Deputy Executive Dean for the college. They supported this program extensively. Thank you so very much. Dr. Sokela, who deeply represented the Department of Public Service and Administration. Please stand up, let them see you. Ms. Obaken, please stand up, let them see you. The DG of DPSA did not see herself as the DG. She sees herself as a big sister. And she helped us and she supported us so much. Most of you that traveled here that has to apply for South African visas, you know what I'm talking about. So we say thank you. Please, Obakan, tell the DG, thank you. We're very grateful. I have to leave the podium now for other programs, but before I do that, I'm going to say a very big thank you to Professor Boya, KG, the COD of Department of Business Management. He is not the COD. He is a personal friend and a very big supporter of this program. He did so much behind the scene, and he has done so much here. Professor Boya, please stand up, let them see you. Thank you. Professor Chisasa is a personal friend. He has helped us so much. I am not going to talk about Professor Scott. But when you see him, you see a born administrator. You see someone that is so good and resolute in finding solutions. That is the title that he shares with Professor Molauzi. Professor Molauzi, I've known him for more than 20 years. I've never seen him for once to complain about anything. The first thing he asks you is, what is the solution? And we sit down and we diagnose issues. I'm going to then have to end with my friend, my personal friend, Professor Shebat Malefani, and Professor Mello. Those two are not just academics, they're organizers. Colleagues, friends, I thank all of you for your support. I thank the APRM, I thank the African Union, I thank the UNDP. And more importantly, I thank the African Development Bank that promised us a lot of money that has not come, but we're going to get it. I thank all of you. Thank you.
In true leadership style, he was just ordering everybody to stand up. The dictatorship, not me. Thank you very much, Prof. I would also like then next to call for their closing remarks, Prof. Velenkoma, who's the Executive Dean of the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs. Prof, over to you.
I think it's good day. Yes, it is quite an honor and privilege to see young people, especially, taking over the reins of making sure that the African continent rises. The African continent becomes a major player in the world. Public administration, public management, policy science, and all the significant areas related to good, or that lead to good governance and the creation of a situation where citizens can influence the direction in which this continent is governed. Citizen participation must never be underestimated. A good example, which I will give instantly, is the case of the last election in South Africa. The last election taught politicians in particular that citizens can tell you what to do. Citizens have the power to say, we're not going to give you the majority. Nobody's going to get the majority until you clean yourselves up to make sure that the country going into the future will be governed properly. Let's clap our hands for the citizens. I must say I'm very happy and would like to congratulate all of you for having held such an important seminar. And that seminar included quite a number of critical players. Professor Scott, Dr. Scott, your resilience and your commitment as Secretary General to make sure that such discussions take place must always be congratulated. I want to recognize also and thank SAPAM for also playing a role in making sure that South African public administration and South Africans who are in this field are in touch with APAM. They work with APAM. The TPSA, your contribution is highly appreciated. I want to say on behalf of UNISA, I want to thank you on behalf of the Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, Professor Linkabola. She could have been here, and as you all know, Vice Chancellors tend to be overstretched, and they've got a lot of issues they've got to handle at an institution as large as the University of South Africa. She would have loved to be here, and her best wishes go to all of you. I want to thank the College of Economic and Management Sciences for being there, and Professor Masechaba and the Deputy Dean. I'm grateful that you represented the university very well. This university is now 151 years old. Last year it celebrated its 150th year of existence. This year it's 151 and has produced some of the eminent scholars, intellectuals, leaders, not only in South Africa, but the continent as a whole. And we must continue as scholars and intellectuals to produce the best of the best and not rely on the West or the East or some other place to produce the quality of intellectuals, public servants we all need to have to rebuild this continent or have this continent to rise. The African Renaissance is a given. It is not a choice. It is a given that we have to pursue the African Renaissance through intellectualism, pragmatism, and being the drivers of proper policies to make this continent to be the best in the world and be competitive throughout. I want to also recognize the participation of the TM School. Unfortunately, I was not well, but I'm told that I've been represented very well. I appreciate that. I thank you for doing a good job. It is wonderful to hear that you had diplomats here. Diplomats play a very critical role in conveying the message about our countries, our continent, and their own countries. I'm sure their participation has made it possible for them to convey to the world how serious public administrators, intellectuals in this part of the world are serious or committed to making sure that Africa will rise and be the beacon of hope, not only for itself, but also the world. To public servants in particular, I want to thank you for being here. I'll tell you why. Anywhere in the world, and not only in the continent of Africa, public servants are the #1 defenders of countries and continents. If public servants are corrupt, if public servants, I'm not saying all public servants are corrupt. Let me just put a disclaimer there. I don't want people to think that all public servants are corrupt. If public servants are not performing accordingly, it means that things are going to go wrong. Public servants are also responsible for the existence of viable economies. And public servants also play a very major role in making sure that the knowledge of invention, the knowledge of discoveries are at play, because they must create the necessary environment. Public servants are very important. So having an occasion, a seminar like this, is very helpful and promising and inspiring that we are moving in the right direction. I want to thank you also for involving postgraduate students. I was listening carefully. The papers were presented, discussions were held, and the speaker who spoke earlier on today, you missed your flight, but you were given an opportunity to speak. It's important to have postgraduate students to be part and parcel of the discussions and also seminars, because postgraduate students are the brain power of the now, the present, and the future. So we must always make sure that we involve them. Let me summarize by saying, well done to all of you. What you have done, I think, in my view, I'm going to borrow from Professor Patili, who gave a lecture in South Africa. What you have done, you have opened up an opportunity for research on projecting a bright future for the African continent. You have created an opportunity for us as intellectuals, as public servants, as thinkers, to revisit the positive history of the African continent. You have actually created an opportunity for all of us to be able to project the future of this continent in a world which is rapidly globalizing. And we must be part of that globalization, but we must dictate or determine how globalization is going to take place. Africa must not just be a follower, but must be a contributor to the knowledge base of globalization. You have also, during these days, undertaken research which wants to see Africa have a sustainable or sustained development trajectory. The study of leadership and citizen participation, very important, and your work, the days you have spent together, point in that direction. Now, Professor Patili from Senegal raised the issue of research on the new scramble for Africa. The scramble coming from the East, coming from the West, coming from Europe, and coming from other parts. And Africa must wake up and say, we shall not allow that scramble to actually destroy us and become servants of other nations. Let me also summarize by saying I heard this morning about the free trade agreement. The free trade agreement must be dictated by the continent, not by somebody else sitting in some place in Europe, in the Americas, or Asia. We must also undertake critical studies on the AU the African Union and critical studies on NAPAD, what has gone wrong and what has gone right with NAPAD, the new partnership on Africa's development. The rule of law, we must preserve and fight for the existence of the rule of law. And public administration, public servants must be the pillars of making sure that the rule of law is maintained. Peace and development. Where there's no peace, there's no development. And I want to assure you that public servants must focus in that area because peace and development go together. And finally, what is critical for us to advocate for is education, education, education. Education is the ultimate liberator. And if we don't use education to liberate this continent will not contribute to science, will not contribute to inventions, and will not contribute to the new world order. I thank you very much and very well done and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. I think that mostly summarizes what we are trying to do, what we should do, and what we should look forward to doing as, members of Africa or the children of Africa. I think the AU, what is it now? I forgot the word. Anthem says Africa should be the tree of life. If we are the seeds, then we need to start fighting up the ground or the stones that are above us and then, grow, flourish. Thank you very much, Prof, for that closing. I would like to call on Dr. Sokela from the DPSA to also say a couple of words. Round of applause.
Thank you very much, Prof. Protocol doesn't allow me to say more once you've spoken. So my task on behalf of the DG is to echo your words because you have summed up. I cannot elaborate, I cannot add because I think you have said enough. For the benefit of the audience, I would like to thank you, Prof, for your endurance. You are one of the commissioners that President Mandela appointed to the first Public Service Commission during the first administration. And I would like to thank you for your endurance and the fact that you have availed yourself. You could have retired and focused on your own affairs, but your endurance is appreciated. So on behalf of the Department of the Public Service and Administration, especially on behalf of the DG and the ministry, because the office is there, although there is no minister, but the ministry is there. And I'm happy that you can, reinforce the message of the public service, the endurance, so that we are able to continue without our political incumbent. To us, that is a demonstration of the strength of the institutions. But I think you have captured the essence of why we are here. Thank you very much, Asante.
Thank you, Dr. Sokela. Next, I would like to call Prof. Scott, who is the Secretary General of APAM, for his closing remarks. I don't have to ask for a round of applause. Please, guys, come on now.
Thank you very much. And let me also continue the expression of gratitude. We will thank the hosts of this very important research seminar, the 8th one, And on this note, want to express profound gratitude to the University of South Africa for hosting us in such a very beautiful manner. Let's give them a big hand. We will thank the permanent partners of this program, the University of Pretoria, University of Stellenbosch, who have been with us since the beginning of this program, this research program. In view of the fact that UNISA has beautifully hosted us, we want to send a message to the professors and heads of department here that APAM and DPSA is requesting their permanent partnership of this program. And if they agree, we will give them a letter. And the implication is that wherever we go, we carry their logo on their documents. Similarly, the Thabo Mbeki Institute, we also request that they become executive director, you become a permanent partner of this program. We want to, again, there are two names that I wanted to thank at the beginning of the programs, but for purpose of protocol, I kept it. But at this point, I want to mention that we have to thank Professor Rafi Arebo-Shola and Dr. Sokela. Let's give them, the two people, a big hand. They are the two people who were hiding behind that heavy curtain, and we held weekly meetings. Sometimes we were quarreling among ourselves. But at the end of the day, we are very happy that we have come a long way. Let me also thank the staff of APAM Secretariat. They have done so well. The invitation letters, the website, and all that. Let's give them also a big hand. The general impression that we have all gathered, apart from the reports that you issue, is that this program today, 8th session, has gone very well and we are more successful. I think it is one of the most successful that we have held so far. What we do as APAM is that, and DPSA is that after the program, we issue out reports. We have requested Dr. Mataiwa, who is our Rapporteur General, to put all the documents together, improve on it, and issue the report. When the report is ready, we will make sure all of you get copies for your reading and keeping. There are lessons to be learned from each of the research series that you've held. And I believe that as you participated effectively in this program, there are very key lessons that you have learned. The most important aspect of the lessons that we learn from this program is that it should not make us the same. It should let people get the impression that we have learned new lessons and we are prepared to carry the new lessons to be part of our behavior and part of the lessons of bringing Africa forward and making Africa great. The 9th session, this has become an annual affair, and the 9th session, or the 9th level of session will come on exactly around this time. Usually we do it around May, June of the year will come on. We will inform you of the hosts. 1 or 2 institutions have already made a request, but we're going to look at several factors and see which institution in South Africa will host this program next year around this time. If you are here and you want your institution to host, kindly get in touch with me or Dr. Sokela and we'll put your name down and we'll see how you go. We'll be issuing you with invitation letters as we go along. This year, the innovation is that of the PhD colloquium. And I believe you agree with me that it has gone on so well that this series of research seminars should carry it along. So I'm happy to inform you that we are going to discuss and make sure that next year we improve on it and PhD curriculum become part and parcel of this PhD seminar series. There's a suggestion from some corner, very informal suggestion, that we should also do a book launch, in which if one of you, anybody has written a book on it, which is carry a innovative knowledge, we should give some 10 minutes to that person to introduce the book, tell us what is in the book, and the lessons that we should carry along. The next thing we want to do is to link this research forum with the APAM Roundtable Conference, which is the annual grand conference that we hold. And this year is coming on in Kampala in November, the last week. We shall issue you with a letter. What we want to suggest is that at that roundtable conference, we will give a platform for somebody that will pick here, I don't know, we'll name him, to present the report of this series to the grand meeting and showcase the work that you have done. We don't want to hide ourselves under the bed. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, I wish again to thank all of you on behalf of DPAC, on behalf of UNISA, on behalf of Thabo Mbeki Institute, on behalf of the APAM Executive Committee and all of them, and all of you participants, beautiful participants, who have contributed immensely to make this program so successful this year. To thank all of you, the minister who wanted to be here but for one reason or the other could not be available, so also the DG who wanted to be here but who circumstances has taken you on an official trip. On this note, on behalf of all of you, we thank all of you very, very much, and on behalf of all the partners that we have named, wish to bring this series to a successful end. Let's give ourselves a big hand. And thank you very much.
Yeah, I guess that's it. Well, not really. I think as the program director, I would like to thank myself. I would like to thank myself again, and I would like to thank myself again.
I think it's proper that we encourage and also thank the program director. Well done. These are the young people I was talking about. These are the young people I was talking about. They must take over the reins and run the race. You have done a good job.
Thank you, Prof.
And we appreciate it. The continent is in your hands, all of you. The rise and fall of the continent is highly dependent on the kind of leadership you give. What we have done and other generations is to pass on the baton or the baton. Well done.
Thank you, Prof. I hope you heard, eh? The continent is in my hands. So if you want to discuss the scramble, please start here, and then, you know, we can then give out countries. I would also like to thank the humble Prof. Arik Bishola, who didn't thank himself. If he would stand so that we can just thank him again for putting all of this together. Prof, please. All right, I think with that, we can then call it a day. Thank you very much for indulging us for these 3 days. As I was closing. Prof. We just reiterating some information I already know, but we're just making sure that we are on one page. Yes, so in closing, that would be it for day 3. So today's lunch is not a sit-down lunch, but you are welcome to take your lunch and sit down. It's a takeaway lunch. So.
you.